Far away, in a quiet and often forgotten corner of the galaxy, there lived a small alien civilization. Their home was a beautiful blue and silver planet, filled with rivers that glowed at night, forests that shimmered with crystal-like leaves, and skies painted with twin moons. For centuries, their people had lived in peace, farming the fertile soil, studying the stars, and creating art that expressed the wonders of their world. They were gentle, kind, and never sought conflict with anyone. To them, war was something ancient, buried deep in history, almost like a storybook tale. They believed that progress meant harmony, not violence. But peace never lasts forever. One day, without warning, dark shadows appeared in their skies. Vast warships, larger than mountains and louder than thunder, broke through the atmosphere. They did not come to trade, they did not come to speak, and they did not come to share. They came to take. The invaders were a ruthless species that saw weaker civilizations only as resources to strip, enslave, and discard. Their arrival was like a storm of fire. Cities were bombed, villages were burned, and proud towers of learning fell to the ground in flames. The gentle people of the planet could not understand why this was happening. They had never harmed anyone. Why then were they being destroyed? At first, their leaders tried to reason. They sent envoys in ships carrying messages of peace. None returned. Then they tried to defend themselves, but their technology was built for building, not destroying. Their weapons were ancient and weak compared to the invaders' powerful cannons and drones. Their shields crumbled like paper under the fire. Within weeks, half their world was already under enemy control. The air was filled with smoke, the rivers ran with ash, and millions were forced to flee their homes, searching for safety that no longer existed. Fear spread quickly. Families huddled in caves. Children cried as they watched the skies glow red with burning cities. Elders whispered that their civilization was nearing its end. Yet, in the middle of despair, there was still a spark of hope. Some among them remembered an ancient idea. The stars were vast, and not all who lived in them could be cruel. Somewhere, far beyond their corner of space, maybe someone would hear their plea. Maybe someone would help. Their scientists worked, day and night in secret chambers hidden deep underground. They built transmitters out of broken machines, patched together antennas from scraps, and focused all their knowledge into one desperate signal. It was not elegant. It was not perfect. But it carried one message: help us. We are dying. When the signal was finally sent, silence followed. Days passed, then weeks. And still, nothing. The invaders continued their attack, and the people continued to run. Many began to lose hope again. Some said the stars were empty, that no one was listening. Others said even if someone heard, they would not care. After all, why would anyone risk themselves for strangers on a forgotten world? But the message did not vanish. It traveled across the void of space, leaping from one system to another, whispering through the cold darkness. It reached places where no one lived anymore, ruins of once great empires. It passed through storms of radiation, through blackness so deep it seemed endless. And finally, far, far away, on a planet that itself had once struggled to survive, the signal reached ears that were not expected. Back on the suffering world, the aliens continued to endure. Every day was harder than the last. Food grew scarce, shelters crumbled, and their songs of joy turned into cries of sorrow. Yet even as despair tightened its grip, there were those who kept looking at the night sky. They whispered to the stars, praying someone somewhere would answer. What they did not know was that their call had already been heard. It had reached beings unlike any they had imagined. These were not gentle traders or wise philosophers. They were not conquerors in shining ships. They were survivors of the harshest world imaginable, creatures who had fought their own battles for thousands of years. These beings did not see danger the way others did. To them, challenges were not something to fear but something to overcome. They lived by pushing limits, by enduring pain, by never giving up. They were called by many names across the galaxy, but one name was whispered with both awe and fear: Deathworlders. And now, for the first time, the gentle alien's plea for help had reached them. The people of the doomed planet still did not know this truth. They went to sleep each night believing they might never see another dawn. Yet fate had shifted. The signal they had almost lost hope in had already begun to stir something in the shadows of space. Somewhere, beyond the edge of their imagination, help was on its way, but it would not be the kind of help they had expected. It would be something far stranger, far more terrifying, and far more powerful. The story of their survival had only just begun. When the distress signal left the dying world and reached Earth, it was not the first strange message humans had heard from the stars. Over the years, they had picked up bursts of static, whispers of energy, and coded signals that made no sense. Most of them were ignored or set aside as puzzles for scientists to solve. But this one was different. This one was not noise. This one carried emotion. The words were broken, the translation imperfect, but the message was clear. We are under attack. Please help us. We cannot survive alone. It was not a request made with pride. It was a cry, raw and desperate, sent by people who had no other choice. And it did not land in silence. It landed on Earth, a world where survival had always been the foundation of existence. Humanity had been called many things by other species in the galaxy. Some called them dangerous, some called them reckless, and some did not call them anything at all because they feared what answering might bring. Among alien archives, humans were listed under a strange category: Deathworlders. That word alone carried heavy meaning. Most habitable planets in the galaxy were gentle, forgiving places where predators were rare and nature cooperated with life. Earth was the opposite. It was filled with storms, diseases, volcanoes, earthquakes, and predators that never stopped hunting. To survive on Earth meant to endure constant struggle. Humanity had grown strong not in comfort, but in hardship. Every generation learned to fight hunger, to face cold winters, to survive wars, and to adapt to disasters. Pain was a teacher, and survival was a culture. When the scientists and leaders of Earth studied the alien distress call, they understood something many others would not have. The plea was real. It was not a trap. It was not a trick. It was the voice of the weak asking the strong for mercy. And though humanity was often divided, when it came to the idea of survival and resistance against oppression, they were united. In hidden chambers deep under cities, meetings were held. Military commanders, scientists, engineers, and diplomats gathered around glowing screens, replaying the alien message over and over again. Some argued that it was not humanity's problem. The galaxy was vast, and there were already too many dangers close to home. Why risk human lives for strangers light years away? But others spoke with conviction. If humanity turned away, then they would be no better than the invaders who destroyed weaker worlds. Helping was not only about saving others, it was about proving what kind of species they wanted to be. The decision was not shouted into the air or celebrated with cheers. It was made in silence with a calm but heavy determination. Earth would answer. Humanity would go. But they would not go as diplomats with soft words. They would go as what they truly were: survivors, fighters, and defenders. Ships that had never been revealed to the public were prepared. These were not enormous fleets like the invaders used. Humanity did not believe in overwhelming size. They believed in precision, in strategy, and in the ability to endure longer than their enemies. Their ships were smaller, but they were fast, agile, and filled with tools designed for both offense and defense. Their soldiers were not bred for war like some alien species, but they had something else. They had experience, the kind that came from centuries of conflict and survival against impossible odds. Training began in silence. Men and women prepared their gear, checked their weapons, and reviewed tactics. They did not speak loudly. They did not brag. They knew the weight of what they were about to face. Some wrote letters to their families. Some stared at the night sky, wondering if they would ever see Earth again, but none of them hesitated. Far across the galaxy, the invaders crushing the alien world had no idea that Earth had heard the call. They had no idea that a force unlike anything they had faced before was on the move. Humanity did not broadcast their plans. They did not send warnings. They moved quietly, their engines leaving only faint traces in the darkness of space. To the untrained eye, they looked like shadows. To the galaxy, they were almost invisible. The first step was not to attack but to observe. Scouts slipped into the alien system, hidden behind asteroids and drifting debris. They studied the invaders' patterns, their fleets, and their weaknesses. Data was sent back instantly. Every movement of the enemy was mapped, every blind spot noted. Humans were not the strongest species nor the largest, but they were hunters. They had learned long ago that survival meant studying the opponent until the moment was right to strike. Meanwhile, back on Earth, ordinary people continued their daily lives, unaware of the choice their leaders had made. Children went to school, workers filled the cities, and the world turned as it always had. Only a few knew that humanity was about to step into a war far beyond its borders, and those few carried the secret with quiet pride. In the alien world that had sent the distress call, hope had nearly died. The people continued to hide, to pray, to wait. They did not know if anyone had heard them. Their skies remained filled with enemy ships, their lands scarred by battle. To them, the stars were silent. Yet even in silence, movement had begun. From the dark edges of space, the Deathworlders were coming. They came not as saviors wearing shining armor or as noble heroes with banners of peace. They came as shadows, silent and calculating. They came as beings who understood suffering, who had lived through fire and storm, who had clawed their way through history by refusing to bow. The galaxy had feared them for centuries, but now, for the first time, that fear was about to become someone else's salvation. The invaders had crushed many worlds before, but they had never fought against humans. And when the moment came, when the shadows of Earth finally revealed themselves, nothing in the galaxy would remain the same. The gentle aliens had asked for mercy. What they would receive instead was something far greater and far more terrifying. The day the strangers finally arrived, the skies above the ruined alien world looked the same as every other day of suffering. Smoke still rose from broken cities. Fires still burned in forests and mountains. The air carried the sharp smell of ash and fear. Families huddled together in caves or broken shelters waiting for the next attack. Many had stopped hoping altogether. To them, the stars had stayed silent too long. But then something unusual happened. At first, the invaders noticed it before the natives did. The enormous warships that had darkened the skies picked up strange movements on their long-range scanners. Small, fast objects were entering the system. They were not registered as part of the enslaved world's fleet, nor did they match the signature of any known ally. The invaders studied the readings carefully, expecting another weak civilization, making a mistake. They laughed among themselves, certain that whoever dared to appear would soon regret it. On the ground, the aliens hiding in their ruined homes saw streaks of light far above the clouds. They thought at first it was more enemy fire, another bombardment, meant to destroy what little was left. Children screamed, elders prayed. But then something was different. The lights did not fall like weapons. They moved like ships, controlled, purposeful, steady. Whispers spread quickly. Could it be someone had finally answered the call for help? No one dared believe it fully. Too many hopes had been broken already. Yet, even with doubt heavy in their hearts, eyes turned to the skies. When the first human ship descended, it was not grand or beautiful. It did not shine with golden light or sing with music as the gentle aliens had once imagined rescuers might. Instead, it was dark, angular, and sharp, built for function rather than beauty. Its hull was scarred from previous battles, and its engines rumbled with a sound like a predator growling. The aliens on the ground trembled. These were not the saviors from their stories. These were shadows, stepping out of the void. The landing shook the earth. Dust rose into the air as ramps extended. Then, for the first time, the native aliens saw them, the humans. They were not the tallest species in the galaxy, nor the strongest. But there was something in the way they stood, something in their eyes that carried weight heavier than any weapon. Their bodies were wrapped in strange armor, simple but strong. Their movements were precise, like every step had a purpose. They did not rush. They did not stumble. They walked forward with the confidence of those who had faced death many times and learned to endure it. The gentle aliens who had sent the call for help trembled at the sight. These were not like them. These beings did not radiate peace. They radiated survival. For a moment, fear grew stronger than hope. Had they made a mistake? Had their signal summoned not saviors, but something even more dangerous? The human leader removed his helmet. His face was scarred, his expression hard, but his eyes were steady. He looked at the crowd of frightened aliens. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant thunder of enemy ships circling above. Then he spoke. His words were translated slowly by machines, broken and imperfect, but the meaning was clear enough. We heard your call. We came. We do not promise safety, but we promise this. We will fight. The aliens listened in silence. Their fear did not vanish, but something stirred within them, something they had not felt in a long time. It was not peace. It was not joy. It was something simpler and stronger. Hope mixed with fire. The invaders did not wait long before responding to the new arrivals. Within hours, their ships moved closer, their weapons glowing. They had destroyed countless civilizations before. They believed these newcomers would be no different, but they were wrong. For the first time, the gentle aliens witnessed how the humans fought. It was nothing like their own desperate defenses. It was not like the invaders' overwhelming attacks. Humanity's style of war was different. Where the invaders relied on sheer force, the humans relied on speed and precision. Where the invaders expected surrender, the humans gave defiance. Every movement, every strike, was meant not just to survive, but to push back. On the ground, human soldiers set up defenses quickly. They turned ruins into fortresses, broken metal into shields, and abandoned vehicles into traps. They did not complain about the lack of resources. They adapted. They had done this before, on their own harsh world. To them, scarcity was not a problem. It was normal. When the first battle began, the skies lit up with fire. The invaders roared forward, confident in their power, but their confidence quickly cracked. The human ships moved in ways they had not expected. Instead of meeting force with force, they cut through weak spots, striking where it hurt most. Instead of retreating under pressure, they advanced, using the very chaos of the battlefield as cover. The gentle aliens watched in awe. For so long, they had believed resistance was hopeless. For so long, they had thought no one could stand against the invaders. But here, right before their eyes, stood a species that not only resisted but struck fear into their oppressors. After the battle, smoke filled the skies once more, but this time it was different. The invaders had been pushed back. For the first time in years, the gentle aliens saw enemy ships retreat instead of advance, and the ones who had made it happen stood quietly among them, checking their wounded, repairing their gear, and preparing for the next fight. The alien leaders approached, the humans, their voices trembling as they asked the question that weighed on everyone's hearts. Why did you come? Why risk yourselves for us? The human commander looked at them, his face unreadable. His answer was simple. Because someone had to. It was not said with pride, nor with arrogance. It was spoken like a fact, as though the humans saw no other choice. And in that moment, the gentle aliens understood something important. Humanity had not come for glory, or for conquest, or even for gratitude. They had come because it was in their nature. They were survivors who refused to watch others fall without a fight. The gentle aliens were still afraid. They did not fully understand these Deathworlders who had walked out of the shadows. But they no longer felt alone. For the first time in a long time, they believed their story might not end in silence and ash. For the first time, the stars had answered. And though the answer was terrifying, it was also powerful. The war for their world was far from over. But from that day on, it was no longer just a story of suffering. It had become a story of resistance, of survival, and of the unexpected arrival of Deathworlders who carried with them both fear and hope. The enemy had grown arrogant. They had crushed countless worlds, enslaved entire civilizations, and assumed that this small, weakened planet would be no different. When the humans arrived, the invaders saw only shadows, mere curiosities to toy with. They did not understand the true nature of these Deathworlders, who came not with hope of conquest but with the will to survive and endure. On the ground, humans moved like a storm in slow motion, methodical and precise. They did not rush blindly into battle. They studied the invaders' patterns, learned their strategies, and anticipated every move. Unlike the gentle aliens, whose strength had always been in thought and cooperation, the humans relied on experience born from struggle. They had survived plagues, wars, and natural disasters. Their world had forged them into fighters, and now that knowledge extended across the stars. As the enemy advanced, expecting an easy victory, the humans set traps that seemed almost too clever to be real. Broken towers became sniper positions. Burned-out vehicles became barricades. Even rubble became tools. Every obstacle was used. Every weakness of the enemy exploited. The aliens watched, unable to fully grasp what they were seeing. It was as if the humans could turn the very world around them into a weapon, bending the environment to their will. The battles were fierce. Explosions tore through the sky. Energy beams carved through the air, lighting up the darkened world. Yet humanity remained calm, organized, and relentless. Soldiers moved in coordinated groups covering each other, striking where the enemy least expected it. The aliens could barely keep up with the speed and precision. They had only seen wars, in theory or from a distance. Now they saw true mastery of survival and combat. For every loss, the humans learned. For every attack, they adapted. The invaders had expected fear and submission, but instead, they faced relentless resistance. Entire squadrons were trapped and neutralized, not through brute force but through cunning and strategy. Human leaders coordinated moves as if they could see the battlefield in its entirety, anticipating attacks before they came. To the aliens, it seemed almost magical. Families hiding in caves dared to peek outside. For the first time in years, hope sparked in their eyes. They had witnessed the humans turning the tide. The enemy, who once seemed unstoppable, now faltered. Ships that had roared across the sky with confidence now retreated under unexpected pressure. They were not used to being outsmarted, outmaneuvered, or resisted with such ferocity. On the ground, the humans did not celebrate their victories. There was no shouting, no dancing, no songs of triumph. They checked their wounded, repaired their equipment, and prepared for the next wave. Every moment mattered. Every second was precious. They did not allow pride or overconfidence to take root. That was the secret of their strength. They fought not for glory but for survival, and they fought with everything they had learned from a harsh and unforgiving homeworld. Slowly, the alien leaders realized something important. These humans were not saviors in the way they had imagined. They did not come to grant mercy, they came to fight. And through fighting, they offered life. Their presence was a shield, their skills a lifeline. Without these Deathworlders, the civilization would have ended in flames. With them, the battle was no longer hopeless. The invaders, confused and frustrated, attempted to regroup. They were used to easy victories and unquestioning submission. Now they faced a force that would not give up, a species that refused to break. Every plan they had worked out before was countered. Every strategy met with a new adaptation. Humanity's resilience was unlike anything they had ever faced. In one decisive engagement, a fleet of invaders moved to destroy the last remaining city. The humans anticipated it. They had set traps in the orbital paths, hidden mines among asteroids, and deployed small, fast ships in precise formations. The enemy entered what they thought was an open field, only to find themselves trapped in a deadly web. Ships were destroyed, soldiers disoriented, and command structures broken. The humans had turned desperation into advantage. Watching from below, the alien people could hardly believe their eyes. What had seemed impossible, a reversal of fortune, was happening. The invaders were faltering. The humans, relentless and precise, were forcing them back, wave by wave. Slowly, the tide of the war turned. When the last battle of the campaign ended, the aliens stepped outside their shelters. The fires still burned, but there was a difference now. The enemy ships were gone, at least for the moment, and the humans stood silently among them, their weapons ready, their expressions calm but alert. No one cheered, but a quiet awe filled the air. The world had been saved not by miracles, not by luck, but by the strength, skill, and determination of beings who had learned to thrive in the harshest conditions imaginable. The alien civilization had learned something vital. Survival sometimes comes not from pleading or hoping, but from standing strong when no one else will. The humans did not stay to rule or demand tribute. They came, they fought, and they ensured life could continue. And in that quiet, disciplined presence, the aliens understood the true power of the Deathworlders from Earth. After the battles ended, the alien civilization was forever changed. Cities were still in ruins, forests still burned, and rivers still carried ash. Yet there was a difference now. Where despair had once filled every corner, a quiet hope now lingered. The people remembered the humans not just for their strength, but for their presence. They had come from a distant world unheard of and feared, and had given the aliens a chance to survive. The humans did not linger. They did not stay to take control, demand obedience, or make rules. They repaired what they could, helped the injured, and left instructions for rebuilding. Then, as quietly as they had come, they departed. Their ships disappeared into the blackness of space, leaving the aliens to rebuild their lives in peace. Goodbye. People watched them go, a mixture of gratitude and awe in their hearts. They realized that the Deathworlders were not gods, not rulers, but something rarer, a species that understood the true value of survival, the meaning of endurance, and the necessity of strength. The humans had shown them that sometimes salvation did not come from mercy or compassion, but from determination and courage. Stories spread quickly among the alien population. Children whispered about the dark figures who had descended from the stars, whose eyes shone with a strange light, and whose movements were precise as a predator's. Elders told tales of how the humans had turned despair into hope, how they had fought when all seemed lost, and how they had vanished like shadows once the threat was gone. These stories became lessons, teaching future generations the value of resilience and the importance of courage. Scientists and engineers took what they could from the humans' technology, not to weaponize, but to learn, to rebuild, and to protect their world. The methods of adaptation and survival impressed them. The humans had not relied on magic or miracles. They had relied on thinking, planning, and endurance. Every innovation, every strategy was grounded in the harsh reality of their own world, which had shaped them into beings capable of facing impossible odds. In the months and years that followed, the alien civilization began to recover. Cities were rebuilt stronger, defenses planned more carefully, and education included lessons of the humans' arrival. Though the scars of war remained, the memory of the Deathworlders gave them courage. They knew that even in the darkest hour, there were beings in the galaxy willing to fight when no one else would. The memory of the humans became a symbol, a legend told not to glorify battle, but to remind everyone of what determination could achieve. They had answered a desperate call without promise of reward, without hope of recognition, and without concern for personal gain. Their actions left a lasting mark on the alien civilization, shaping its culture, its values, and its understanding of strength. In the end, the galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A small, peaceful civilization had reached out in desperation, and the answer they received was unlike anything they could have imagined. The Deathworlders had come, not as saviors of comfort, but as warriors of survival. They had taught the universe that true strength is not only in power, but in the will to act when others cannot. The aliens continued to look to the stars, but no longer with fear. Now they saw possibility. Now they saw that even in the vast emptiness of space, a call for help could be answered by those who refused to let others fall. And though the humans never returned to rule or dominate, their legacy endured. The galaxy remembered the day the Deathworlders came, a day when hope was forged not in mercy, but in the fire of courage and the certainty of survival.